Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Let's try that a little bit, a little more energy here. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We have a lot of simchas in the room, so we got to have a little more ruach here. So this is a powerful parasha, and I want to begin. The name of this Torah portion is Shemini. Before we get to one of the key parts of the Torah portion, I want to ask us a question that can be considered either a very simple question or one with a lot of profundity. And it's really can go either way, however you receive it. What I'd like to ask everyone here is to take a moment and think about when you pray, when you're engaged in prayer, what do you see? What do you see? Where does your eye or where does your mind's eye go when you pray? Anyone like to share? Yeah. Say it again. The Ner Tamid. Very nice. The Ner Tamid, the eternal flame, right, that stands in front of our ark. Great, great, fantastic. Anyone else? Michal, you're sort of like in between? Yeah. Any just memories in general, a specific time, every time it's a different area, or something more specific?
It's Israel and family.
Yeah, memories of Israel and family. Thank you, Michal. Really great. Anyone else? Oh, yes, all the way in the back. Can someone just say that a little bit louder? She sees grass. Yeah, awesome. Beautiful, thank you. Oh, sorry. Yes.
She goes to the heavens, but also wants them to hear and feel community around.
To the heavens. And once you are in a place of prayer, then you feel the community around you. By the way, one of my teachers talks about how the place of one of the areas of the most powerful prayer for him, or meditation, is when he is flying on an airplane and he looks out at the great, vast array of clouds in the sky. That causes him to engage in prayer. It gives us an image of the heavens and being above. But thank you, Hillary. Anyone else? So it's very interesting. We're sitting here in a sanctuary in a synagogue. Synagogue was first something that came about naturally, where Jewish people would come together thinking about each other when they go on a journey to Israel, or when they were in exile, thinking about those who were making a pilgrimage to the land of Israel. And therefore, where everyone was directed to look would be the direction of east, to east. There's some synagogues that are northern Israel. The Golan will be directed towards Jerusalem. And that's a little bit, you can see right here, that our synagogue is directed in the to eastern direction, causes us to think about Israel. And you can see the flag of Israel here. So whereas we all have our own way of coming up with the images that we connect to, there is some effort by Jewish tradition to create structures that we are in for moments of prayer that will influence what it is that we see, one of which is Israel. The second, you can see in front of you, is the ark. And what is inside the ark but our Torah? And I think that's intentional, to highlight the power of the Word of God, or of the influence of the text to be at the forefront of Jewish being. One of the greatest non-Jewish images of a place that directs us to see the power and sanctity of the written Word has anyone ever been to the National Archives? Okay, right? You've been there? Okay, yeah, right? Okay, very good. Yeah. And has anyone seen the hall where the Declaration of Independence stands? I mean, it's really powerful. You're in there and you just realize just the weight that one document carries in shaping the direction of a nation. And the same is true for us, the Jewish people. When we think about the power of the Torah to influence a people throughout the generations. Which brings us, in some ways, to this week's Torah portion. When the Jewish people, the people of Israel, were wandering through the wilderness, what was the center of their community, the center of where their prayers were perhaps directed, their worship was directed, the area that the entire camp faced? The center of the camp stood the sanctuary, the Mishkan. And in the middle of the Mishkan was the tabernacle. Inside the tabernacle was the place where God's offerings could be brought forward. And the image there is fire. And when there wasn't a sacrifice going on, there was a ner tamid, which has already been referenced and we carry with us to this day. But I want to highlight this idea that in the center of the sanctuary was fire. And what did it mean for the Jewish people as they're going through this journey through the wilderness? When it came for moments to think about God, they thought of fire. This was the fire that brought them out of Egypt. This was a liberation fire. This was a fire that protected them when the Egyptians came after them. This was a fire that also gave them direction as they followed this fiery cloud through the wilderness at night. And right before the gates open for the first worship to be offered, which occurs in this week's Torah portion, we learn of the tragedy of Nadav and Avihu, the children of Aaron, who bring forth an offering at the wrong time and therefore are consumed by this fire. So this is also a fire of pain and destruction. And that's one of the things I want to share with you today, which is one of the lessons that we get from this week's Torah portion, is to have an image of God in our lives that is complex, that is both forgiving and also offensive. That is a God that is an image that is caring and also one that is threatening. And one of the ways that the rabbis try to craft prayer is to put us, the prayer, in between two polar opposites, with the hope that as we reconcile between those two differences, we come to find where we are with God. A mental exercise, if you will, that helps us understand the power of God in our lives. In the prayer book, before we say the Shema, we say a blessing recognizing God as the creator of the universe. And then we say a blessing over God as the God who gives the people of Israel God's Torah, a universal God and a general God. And our work is to find God somewhere between those two. And the fire serves as a way, at least beginning in the wilderness, to help the people of Israel understand what it means to accept God in their lives. I want to share with you another way that we can understand both what took place in this week's Torah portion and what it means, a good framework of how we can have a good image in our minds when we engage in prayer. Nadav and Avihu offer a foreign flame. And one of the challenges here is that they bring something that they were not invited to bring. And yet at the same time, they're showing their own initiative, and that initiative to be closer to God is one that is not rewarded. Rather, it is punished. And one way to redeem their story, to find something we can learn from that, is that Nadav and Avihu, instead of creating a space for God, they force themselves into a God space. Whereas God is asking for contraction, to create a space for God's flame to exist in the community, they are moving forward and limiting that space because of their own wishes. And it leads to this idea that one of the biggest obstacles, perhaps, for us to engage in meaningful prayer, if you take a moment and think about, when I don't feel connected to God, what's getting in the way? And I think for many of us, I have a lot of distractions. I have a lot of ideas that go into my mind, and it just takes me away from perhaps what I should be doing, or from engaging in a moment, engaging in all these temporary moments interrupt this eternal moment. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel quotes from the book of Deuteronomy, right before we get the Ten Commandments. So you can understand Deuteronomy reviews the moments when we get the Ten Commandments. So it could be a different way of telling that story. And right before we receive the Ten Commandments, there is this very beautiful verse. I just want to get to it. Give me 1 second. It's chapter 5, verse 5. I labeled Book of Numbers, chapter 5, but not the book of Deuteronomy. Anochi omed bein Adonai uveinechem. I stood between the Lord and you at that time. Now the narrative is, Moses is talking about, I stand between you, the people of Israel, and God at that moment when I gave you the Ten Commandments. And Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel learns from a Hasidic teaching that the Anochi is not Moses, but the Anochi is the I, the me. And sometimes we have to humble ourselves. We have to contract our own ego. And in the process of contracting our own ego, we create a space for God. And perhaps we can understand the story of Nadav and Avihu as two people meaning well or not meaning well, but it highlights the challenge that when we put ourselves first, we limit the presence of others, we limit the presence of the divine to place themselves into our being. And that can be an obstacle for engaging in prayer. So I encourage us, as we read through this Torah portion, and later on in this service, when we go through the Musaf Amidah, we engage in self-reflection and prayer, to think about what are the images that go through my mind during moments of prayer. And if I'm not feeling a sense of connection, how can I make myself smaller so that I can make the canvas of God appear more great and grandeur in my life? Shabbat Shalom.